Alright, let's place these new champions on the tier list. Attacks one enemy, heals all allies by 10% of their max HP. Excellent. Attacks all enemies 2 times. The damage dealt by the skill increases by 5% for each ally above 50% HP. Places a perfect veil buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Damage based on defense and enemy max HP. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. That's overpowered. But if you don't deal any damage based on attack, I don't know why you have any attack. 804. Default defense is 1,520. Default HP is 18,825. Default speed is 107. Critical damage is 63%. Critical rate, resist, and accuracy are average. Alright. Attacks all enemies. Before attacking, places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Places a 25% strengthen buff and a counterattack buff on all allies for 2 turns. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. This is... wow. Places a revive on death buff for 1 turn on an ally when that ally's HP falls below 50%. If there are multiple champions on the team with the skill, only one will activate. The skill will not activate on duplicate copies of this champion if this particular champion is dead. Passive effect. At the start of this champion's turn, removes 1 random debuff from a random ally and fills their turn meter by 10%. Fully level up, cooldown will be 4 turns. This is an S tier defense champion. That's not even counting her aura skill, which increases ally defense in all battles by 30%. S tier. Hilvi, the Rheimgold. Damage based on attack. Okay, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance, but when fully leveled up, will have a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. If Tormund the Cold is on the same team, has a 25% chance to instantly activate his Rimfire skill, or Rhymefire skill. Removes all buffs from all enemies and places a freeze debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. This skill's cooldown cannot be decreased or reset. Okay, well, you just... so if you teamed up with certain other support type champions, some of their most overpowered skills will not work on you. Great. Instantly activates Tormund the Cold's Blizzard Rage skill if he's on the same team. Oh. Really? Oh, come on. Whenever an enemy receives a freeze debuff, this champion steals 1 random buff from them and places an HP burn debuff on them for 2 turns and decreases their turn meter by 10%. If Tormund the Cold is on the same team, fills his turn meter by an amount equal to the enemy turn meter decreased by this skill. The skill will not activate on duplicate copies of this champion if this particular champion is dead. Of course, your passive skill is not going to activate if you're dead. Why do you have to put that there? Unless the passive skill says that it will do something if you're dead. Of course, it's not going to activate if you're dead. Gosh. And your default accuracy is 20. You don't place any increased accuracy buffs. Revives all dead allies with 50% HP and 30% turn meter. Places a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn and a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Will place these buffs even if no allies were revived. If no allies were revived by the skill, also fills the turn meters of all allies by 25%. This skill's cooldown cannot be decreased or reset. Increases ally speed in all battles by 19%. Okay, despite this, oh wait, fully leveled up cooldown will be 4 turns. Despite this S tier skill, and this S tier default speed at 110, I can't place this champion anywhere above C tier. First of all, these debuffs will not be placed unless the enemy has resistance lower than 20. Even with artifacts and accessories, I'm not placing this champion anywhere above B tier. If your full potential requires a certain other champion to be on the same team, that's just not overpowered. C- tier, despite this skill. You don't even attack all enemies. If you didn't have that, if it wasn't for this ward of the Glacier skill, would have been D or F tier. Arakoa Moonspinner. If this attack kills an enemy, grants an extra turn. If a target is under a block active skills or decreased defense debuff, fills the champion's turn meter by 5%. By an additional 5%. Fills the champion's turn meter by 5% for each critical hit. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Okay. Damage based on attack, and enemy max HP. Cooldown 3 turns. Attacks one enemy 3 times. Will always use this skill instead of the default skill when counterattacking. This skill cannot be blocked by block active skills debuffs. Will ignore shield and block damage buffs. Just makes the last champion even less overpowered. Not that they were actually overpowered to begin with, but anyway. Additionally, ignores unkillable buffs if the target is under a block active skills debuff or decreased defense debuff. Fills his champion's turn meter by 25% for each critical hit. Default accuracy is 0, but increases accuracy accuracy in all battles by 80, so that makes default accuracy 80. Now, does this champion place block active skills or decrease defense debuffs? Not in this form. Attacks one enemy 4 times. Each hit will ignore 15% of the target's defense. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. But if the target's under a block active skills or decreased defense, debuff will ignore 30% of the defense. Fills champion's turn rated by 20% for each critical hit. Critical rate is 15%. And places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns. Okay. Champion is immune to stun, sleep, fear, true fear, provoke, freeze, and petrification debuffs while under a veil or perfect veil buff. Okay. While under a veil or perfect veil buff cannot receive critical hits. And stat, but in the base form, default accuracy is 20, which would make it 100 because of the Aura skill. Increases this champion's speed by 4 for each debuff attempt placed by this champion, and by 2 for each debuff resisted when this champion attempts to place debuffs. Stacks up to 100, so that would make it 200 without any artifacts or accessories. That would make this champion have 200 accuracy in their base form. Wow. Removes all buffs from all enemies. And with that additional accuracy, it's basically guaranteed to happen. Grants an extra turn if 8 or more debuffs were placed by the skill. Places a 60% decreased defense debuff and a block active skills debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. And because the champion has 110 default speed, it will have enough time to switch to the alternate form and use these skills while enemies are under these debuffs. Decreases turn meters of all enemies by 50%. Decreases turn meters of all enemies by 100% instead if this skill is used on an extra or instant turn. This is one of the best champions for the Spider's Den. Places a True Fear debuff for 1 turn, but for 2 turns against enemies whose turn meter is fully decreased by this skill and bosses. You can't place True Fear debuffs on bosses. Bosses are immune to that. Attacks all enemies, though. This champion's S tier already. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit decreases the target's turn meter by 5%, and by an additional 5% if the target is under any debuffs placed by this champion. S tier, no doubt. But the most overpowered champion in all of Raid Shadow Legends is still the Calamitous, followed by Theodosia.